My name is Zachary, and I'm your favoriteologist's favoriteologist. I'm your dream gay's dream gay, and I'm here to serve you exactly what you are. I have seen a lot of people wondering, where did Chappell Roan come from? And I have to tell you, Chappell Roan did not just fall out of a coconut tree. She exists in the context of all in which she lives and what came before her. With a lustrous golden red mane, white face paint, skinny eyebrows, an array of drag-inspired DIY costumes, and the best damn debut pop record you've heard in a hot minute, Chappell Roan is doing something we haven't seen since the likes of Lady Gaga, organically shifting the culture with thoughtful, outrageous antics and bulletproof pop songs that will withstand the test of time while making you want to dance. That's right, Chappell Roan is the future of pop music. She is devoted to serving. In fact, it's her number one priority, to gag her audience, not the general public. You will never find Chappell Roan pandering to the masses. She knows who she wants to target, and she will give every last bit of herself for those specific people. Anyone else with questions or objections is offered a shellacked acrylic middle finger. And what happens along the way? She converts the masses into her devotees. She really reminds me of Lady Gaga, but in a more modern and perhaps more progressive way. Gaga's music was heavily referential and devotional to the gays, and the absurdity of her image was not always in service of a wider purpose. It was often just to shock, awe, and surprise, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Chappell is different in the sense that every little thing she does is intentional. From the costume she's wearing on stage, to the way that she's performing her songs, to the little production flourishes in her music, for example, that delicious cowbell in Super Graphic Ultra Modern Girl, they all add up to serve her larger purpose, which is to transmit the queer experience and have queer people really see themselves, their culture, their performance, their stories, their costumes on stage beside her. Lady Gaga was like the queen of the gays, but Chappell Roan is much more gay queen of the gay people. It certainly helps that she has documented her queer coming of age story so beautifully on this first record, The Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princess. Gaga identifies as bisexual, I believe, but her references to her sexuality are more discreet and I don't think are the main purpose of her work. Chappell Roan, however, is discovering herself in real time, which is what makes what she does so terribly exciting, especially as we're seeing it explode so organically. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing the birth of a supernova. It's an exciting moment to get involved in the Chappell Roan experience. Despite Universal pulling her music off TikTok during the release of her latest and biggest single, Good Luck Babe, it still went viral. She doesn't need the heavy hand of a lengthy A&R team or a complicated promotional setup comparing her music to pop icons of the past. Her body of work simply speaks for itself, and her presence is clear from the moment you hear one of her songs or even set eyes on her just doing her act, her regular Chappell Roan thing. It's unique. In today's video, I'll chart her meteoric rise and explain to you why I think Midwest Princess is the most compelling debut record of the decade, no cap, and also some speculations about where her career will go from here. If you're new here, my name is Zach. Welcome to my channel. I'm the Swiftologist. I make thoughtful weekly videos about pop culture. I talk about Taylor Swift a lot, but I talk about other people too. Last week, I talked about Camila Cabello's CXOXO. Is it a flop or not? You'll have to watch the video to check out. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. Over 50% of you that watch are unsubscribed, and that is offensive. We're also about to hit 100K on TikTok, so thanks for that. And before we get any further in today's video, here is a message from our wonderful sponsor. I want to say a huge thank you to our returning sponsor, Riverside. Riverside is a tool that records and edits podcasts and videos, and I use it personally on a daily basis to record Evolution of a Snake and Swiftologist content. Now, a feature that I have been loving lately on Riverside is the teleprompter. I always get comments asking how I am able to speak at length without taking a break. More often than not, I am using a teleprompter. I've tried a couple of different solutions here, including this insane piece of glass that keeps getting caught on my camera lens, but Riverside's script editing capabilities and how the script appears in my studio over my screen when I record has been a true lifesaver. It also completely eliminates the need to use an annoying Bluetooth remote, which I love. You can see here in my studio when I put in the script and I just press go live, the script starts to automatically role play over my screen where I am looking into the camera, which is awesome. Also, while doing this, I can see how I look while I'm recording in real time. Am I making eye contact with the camera? Am I blurry or out of focus? It also really helps reduce the filming burden of transferring from a memory card and realizing that you've either filmed an hour-long video with no sound or bad image quality. And yes, that has happened to me multiple times before I used Riverside. Something else I've been loving lately is the transcription editing feature, which allows me to find words that I want to edit out and remove entirely from my videos. For my podcast, I'm always looking for ums and ahs, the occasional cough, and any swear words, because I don't know if you know this, but YouTube demonetizes swear words. So I go into my transcript editor and I locate the words and I delete them out. All right, here I am in my little Riverside studio. You can see all of the many recordings that Madeline and I do. We literally use this exclusively for our podcast. Here is one of our recent podcast recordings. Let me show you how you can edit out specific words. I'm going to search the entire transcript for a swear word. Do we have any of those swear words here today? Yes, we do. We do. Of course, it was said by Madeline, Queendom. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to highlight it. Delete. Gone. Delete. Period. If you are a content creator, or even if you're like a lecturer or like a teacher at a university that needs to like give an address to camera, something like that, you need to try Riverside now for free, and you can use the coupon code Swiftologist for 15% off of your own individual plan. So go to creators.riverside.fm/Swiftologist and make use of that. Thank you again so much to Riverside for working with me again on today's video. To explain the rise of Chappell Roan, we need to go back to the beginning. If you're not familiar with her origin story, she was signed by Atlantic Records as a 17-year-old, then dropped at the age of 22 when her music failed to meet their expectations. An essential part of the Chappell rise is a quintessentially American narrative. She pulled herself up by her bootstraps, arriving at her current moment of glory with blood, sweat, and tears, having to prove not only to industry people that she was capable of this moment, but also to convince herself after years of failure that she was even able to do it. You see, Chappell was snapped up at a very young age by the label Vultures in Los Angeles. She wrote a song called Die Young in a performing arts camp, which got her signed to a major label. This is every young artist's dream come true in the age of social media. It echoes the success story of Justin Bieber. An unknown's shining talent is brought to light by the advent of the internet, plucking them straight from obscurity and into the forefront of popular culture. Chappell's story is actually a fairly boilerplate story for a young, discovered artist. She auditioned for The Voice and America's Got Talent before she got signed, and though she didn't make it through, this gave her the confidence to perform more regularly. She is very close with her mom, who helped arrange local gigs for her in Willard, Missouri, a small conservative farming town, population 6,500, and then in Springfield, Missouri, which is a much larger city somewhat nearby where she grew up. In Springfield, Chappell participated in open call auditions and embarked upon a short-lived but very fruitful acting career. Through her acting school, she was signed to an acting management in LA, who said basically, until you can move here, we can't really do anything for you. You're too young, so you should just focus on music instead. And that's when she started writing songs. Like any girly on the internet in the 2010s, her biggest musical influences at the time were Lana Del Rey, Ellie Goulding, and Lorde. You can definitely hear this inspiration from each of these artists in one of her earliest songs, Die Young, a broody, introspective, semi-confused lyrically tale of being a depressed teen. Many such cases, I suppose. She just wants to hold you tight and a lot of attention is paid to Chappell Roan's evolution and her ability to transform, and I think this is a very key part of her artistry and something that will serve her well in the future. But what I'm more interested in this specific point of her story is tracing the essence of her musicianship from its very nexus. So whatever it is that we can see here in this prehistoric Kaylee Rose, which is Chappell's legal name, what can we see then now in Chappell's work? There is a kind of latent country influence in a lot of her early lyricism, which I'm sure is informed geographically by where she was. Songs about her mama crying, her daddy disapproving. When revisiting Die Young, Chappell says that she wrote it at a summer camp and she wanted to write about how her friends smoked and it was killing them and how they were going to die young. Die Young is kind of a nothing burger because, well, nothing had happened to her yet. She had nothing to write about. And you'll see as we go along that the more life Chappell lives, the more her true colors and her capacity as an artist begins to peek through. Here's a subconscious link I see between the musical stylings of Kaylee and Chappell. The chorus of Die Young thematically contains the exact message that's conveyed on Pink Pony Club. Her mother's worry at her daughter growing up too fast, burning too bright, leaving the nest too soon. I consider Pink Pony Club to be Chappell's true breakthrough moment when the current Chappell Roan that we know and love broke out of her cocoon and the shackles of her record label. So it's interesting to see a connective tissue forming between those two seemingly opposed moments in her discography. So after she shot a homemade music video for the song, her acting management shopped the song and a few others around on a demo CD to a couple of labels in LA and New York, and she went to both cities to perform a showcase for the labels who indicated interest. Republic, Capitol, Columbia, and Atlantic, who ended up signing her, wanted to hear from her. She found this process extremely stressful. She didn't have music representation. Remember, her acting management was the link here. So she really had no clue what she was getting herself into at like literally 16 years old, and no one who knew what they were talking about to advocate for her. The mismatch of her voice, it being quite low and mature, paired with this kind of vague, dark storytelling was what labels were very drawn to right off the bat. Keep in mind that labels are often looking to clone other successful artists in hope of riding their coattails somewhat. So what and who was doing really well in 2014? 2014. But of course, we had the rise of Lorde. I'd say that was the most influential act for A&R reps at major labels in that time. We also had St. Vincent, FKA Twigs, and Charlie XCX reaching darker and edgier music to critical acclaim and or commercial success. I can see how from that very early video of Chappell performing Die Young, labels saw a resonance with what they were looking for, literally a Lorde 2.0. I mean, look at Chappell. She has a similar energy and even a similar story to Lorde here. Girl from small town with a big mane of curls, dark eyes, and this kind of brooding, weird quality about her, ready to offer up some thoughts about the world. The difference here was that Lorde arrived kind of fully formed, so influenced by her surroundings and also her family. Don't forget, Lorde's mother is a poet. That impacts her writing ability, and deeply academic. She was quite literally a prodigy. And Chappell, though she of course had the makings of a star as we know now, was really not ever going to fit the exact mold of a Lorde 2.0. She was not a prodigy. That was not her bag. What do we know her for now? Jubilance, camp, tackiness, maximalism. Quite literally the opposite of what labels were looking for from her in the first place. So really, Chappell's story is the story of the perils of snatching up artists too soon and shoving them out into the world before they're ready. It seems that the practice of a development deal, which Taylor Swift had before she moved to Big Machine, is kind of dead. And for a certain kind of artist, a development deal is foundational. They allow artists to get in writers' rooms and figure out their sound without the pressure of having to release straight away. This was more pre-internet, I think, when they had to focus group their pop stars a little bit more. They couldn't just hard launch them into the mainstream and expect them to succeed. It kind of saved labels from putting out flops that didn't sell, but it also, I think, helped artists sometimes really sharpen their craft. Development deals can end up with an artist being shelved, however, so that is kind of a danger. But I think if a good label had really invested in Chappell and just waited a little bit to see her artistic development, instead of rushing out music that wasn't her full potential and then judging her success based on that, she wouldn't have had such a difficult experience creating her first record, and she wouldn't have had to go independent. But it was all for the best. It was all for the best. Chappell kind of emerged into the industry when the 360 deal was really at its height, which is where labels get a percentage of everything you do as an artist: touring, merchandise, endorsements. And there is a lot of pressure under these deals to just release and release and release, unless they decide to shelve you, which can happen either way, whether you're under a 360 deal or not. Anyway, back to the story. So after doing a showcase for Atlantic Records, whom she loved because she felt the A&R team were very involved with her and hands-on, she signed with them and began writing and production sessions, which she knew nothing about. You can see the appeal here for a label. They love to get in early and try and create someone rather than letting that person create themselves. It's easier to work with someone that's willing to be molded. They were very fixated on getting a team around Chappell of writers and producers, and this was extremely stressful for her. She was flying to LA or New York every 6 weeks just to write music, and she said that it was a horrendous experience because she was so young in these sessions with musicians who were so senior to her. She stressed that she didn't even know the difference between a writing and a production session, and she was still learning the structure of how to write a song, and she felt very disempowered, as any young person would in these situations, not knowing how to say no to an idea that she didn't like. She felt like she was failing over and over again. She was also working mostly with older men, and she wanted to talk about delicate topics like losing your virginity. There wasn't really a safe space created for Chappell to be creative, I suppose. And guess who the first person they paired her up with to write was? You guessed it, Joel Little, noted producer of Lorde's debut record, Pure Heroin. Make it less obvious that you wanted a Lorde knockoff, Atlantic. She was very excited to get in the room with him because she loved Lorde, but she felt very taken aback by his Lorde Platinum records and all of the Grammys. And here's a quote from Chappell about this era that I think really sums up the problem.
And I also didn't really know what I wanted. I didn't know you were supposed to know what you wanted when you went in there. I thought we were just gonna talk and write a song. I didn't know how to get there though.
Before her EP comes out, she moves to LA for the first time. She drove her car from Missouri to LA, where she lived with friends from summer camp, and she found it very difficult to adjust in that first year. She was unlearning a lot of things that she had learned from her more conservative background, and she mentioned specifically that she was learning how to be herself. She was questioning, do I think this? Do I like this? Do I believe this? Or am I just repeating what my mom said? She felt she had completely destroyed her value system and had very few friends. It was hard for her. And this is also, I think, where her queer awakening began to happen. So anyway, all of these extensive sessions had very diminishing returns. The eventual EP from this time, School Nights, comprised mostly of stuff that Chappell had written before she got signed, with 1 or 2 co-writes actually on this project. And at this point, especially as she had begun to tour this EP, her actual life that she was living in LA, having these queer experiences, was very different from the life that she was writing about on School Nights. There was a disconnect between the music and the artist. One of her first touring experiences was 46 shows in 8 weeks with Declan McKenna, and she, again, felt horrendously unprepared for this undertaking. And she was exhausted. It had been a couple of years of really trying to make something stick, and nothing was. When Chappell turned 21, she went to the clubs in West Hollywood, notably the Abbey, a huge gay bar, and she was completely enamored by how intense it was. Go-go dancers, streamers, fog machines. This was a huge culture shock to her coming from Missouri. She immediately said that she felt the way you're supposed to feel at church. She remembers the pastor in her youth asking the congregation, question, do you feel the Holy Spirit in you? And she felt that the second that she walked into the Abbey. This is how the Holy Spirit is supposed to feel. Watching the go-go dancers on the table, she just said to herself, I want to do that. I want to be confident and free in that very specific way. And that's where Pink Pony Club was born. Her next two songs don't really fit neatly into the pre-Pink Pony or the post-Pink Pony Chappell that we've known. Love Me Anyway and California. California I actually really like, are kind of moody, contemplative, more autobiographical moments. Love Me Anyway is a mid-tempo ode to her friends who loved her regardless of her faults. And California is about her being homesick and missing seasons.
Come get me out of California. I miss the seasons in Missouri.
I think the undercurrent through California is how difficult it had been to assert herself as an artist with Atlantic and what a toll that had taken on her, making her feel so isolated. And at this point, Chappell was also actively being shelved. She was scheduled to release a debut in the vein of School Nights. She had it all completed in 2018, but they continually delayed it and kept wanting to test singles before investing in the full project. This would end up being the biggest blessing in disguise. They told her that she needed to switch lanes and start over as a last-ditch effort and do something more pop. And so, we meet the diva, Pink Pony Club. So Pink Pony Club comes out during the pandemic with this gorgeous, wonderful music video. It's Chappell basically doing her damn best to match the energy of the queens in an empty gay bar. She's nervous and she's shy at first. She's not sure if she belongs here, but slowly as the spotlight warms her up, she finds her place and she finds her joy in the performance and the presence of where she is. This song was co-written by Dan Nigro and it is theatrical and ridiculous. The phrasing here is so unique. I'm having wicked dreams of leaving Tennessee. There's something very old-timey about her storytelling, but also contemporary with the sound that accompanies it. The anthem unfurls as Chappell's mother theoretically despairs that her daughter is lost, while she simply cannot stop dancing at the metaphorical Pink Pony Club, where she can finally be herself in peace. And this also begins a focus of her storytelling, which is narrativizing queer stories. And there's a very American queer story going on here. The despairing mother can't stop our protagonist sprawl into LA, but it's not as simple as, Mama, I'm dancing at the Pink Pony Club. Her mother's disapproval, her disappointment still hurts. She says in the bridge, don't think I've left it all behind. I still love you and Tennessee is always on my mind, and every Saturday, I can hear your southern drawl 1,000 miles away. This is such an elegant way to express that finding yourself as a young queer person, if your family doesn't support you, can be beautiful and painful at the same time. It can be both freeing and horrific. Brava. I love this song. While Pink Pony Club is coming out, Chappell is feeling deflated. She's realized that a lot of the sweet talk the A&R people had done to her about Grammy campaigns before she even finished an EP was just hogwash. After putting out Pink Pony Club, Chappell felt unhappy and trapped with Atlantic as her label, and she simply felt that she wasn't being heard. And separately, Pink Pony Club just didn't make the money that it needed to make for the label, and so they dropped her. And I bet they rue that day. What's so crazy is that they dropped her just as she had finally done something truly interesting after seemingly investing quite a lot in her. The Pink Pony Club was not a shoestring budget. What killed it, I think, really was the timing. It came out in April 2020, the thick of the pandemic, dead on arrival. This was basically a new artist competing with all the other COVID releases. Something like Future Nostalgia and Rain on Me, which captured the dance club market during the pandemic, for example, would have completely dwarfed Pink Pony Club. So again, it failed to gain traction. On the one hand, you can kind of see the label's perspective. There's no return to live music in sight. Production processes are disrupted. Everyone's bottom lines are thought to be shrinking. So we just need to drop this artist that is not making us any money. Here's Chappell talking about her label struggles.
Major labels just aren't, the system isn't set up to grow baby artists. It is made to grow artists that are doing well and to make them do better.
In hindsight, Chappell is very happy that this happened because without shelving the 3 years of the material that she'd done with Atlantic, she would not have arrived at her new pop sound, having to start over. Luckily, she got to keep all the masters of her unreleased songs when she left, meaning that Pink Pony Club could make its way onto her eventual debut album. This is a coup because it was the first song, I would say, that really started blowing up for her, albeit many years later. Chappell is essentially Cinderella after this. Like, her entire fairy tale has ended at midnight and now she's back to being a pumpkin. She's working in a donut shop, nannying, just trying to get by in LA. Dan Nigro, the collaborator she finally felt was perfect for her and had pushed her to be a better writer and performer, had just scored a big hit with Driver's License and Sour and had to shift his attention to focus entirely on Olivia for a period of time. After a year of scraping by and a brief move back to Missouri, in 2022 she signed to Sony Publishing. They gave her some money, or an advance, to start writing full-time so she didn't have to work all these odd jobs with Dan Nigro. This made her an independent artist. Everybody who worked with her during this period of time, creating what was the bulk of Fall of a Midwest Princess, reduced their rates to help her. By giving their time to Chappell a discounted rate, she ended up being able to create something that looked like a major label project on an independent artist budget. She felt very freed by not having the red tape around releasing, and she found herself creating, releasing, and sharing way more content as an independent artist with fewer resources than having to go to the bank basically and ask for a loan approval to put out a new song. But here's the issue with being independent. It's really hard to get your songs on the radio and to do something like a headline tour. There are whole arms of labels that are just dedicated to building relationships with radio stations. That includes the mythical payola, pay to play. There is a whole strategy behind the art of simply getting stations to spin your music, and a lot of that is relationship based. It's very gatekeepy. And that's why even if you're an independent artist that is huge online, you are probably not likely going to be played on the radio unless you have a massive, massive hit. Do artists still need the radio? It's still more profitable than streaming. So from a livelihood perspective, yes, especially when they're trying to break through. The exposure that you have on the radio introduces your voice to a much wider audience than a playlist or an algorithm is going to. In an interview in 2022, Chappell said that despite having the bare bones infrastructure of something that could make her debut look like a major label project, the one thing she could not do was hustle her songs to the radio. That does kind of change recently, but we're not there yet. Chappell is very frank about what it means to be signed to a label. I find this very refreshing and how it works, which is different to other artists. She has often said that she doesn't even want to be signed to a label or to be on the radio to begin with. That goal may have changed now with her runaway success, but still, part of what makes Midwest Princess such an exciting debut is the fact that the caliber of the work is so high, and we know that she did it on her own. Once Dan had some more time to devote to Chappell, he gave her some advice that changed her life. Your career is going to die if you don't do this on your own. This was a real paradigm shift for her, and it's where the Chappell Roan we know now starts to take shape. We know she was finding her queer identity and that she'd been hugely influenced by drag. The spirit and ethos of drag at its core is really about individual character creation, using your own two hands to do your hair, your makeup, and literally build your costume to support and project the vision of yourself that you want to see in the world. This was something that Chappell could adopt on a bit of a budget. Her aesthetic was born both out of necessity and also her quest to find her identity. She wanted to be a big budget pop star, but she didn't have the cash. She wanted to feel at home in her own skin, but she had never been exposed to a vision of what that would look like as a queer person. And I think this is really where Chappell's magic sauce lies. She's far from the first queer person or queer woman even to attempt pop stardom. We have our left of center stars like King Princess, Troye Sivan, Fletcher, Haley Kiyoko, and so on, but that music doesn't tend to transcend the scene in which it lives. What Chappell has a real nose for is the phantasmagorical and an obsession with creating anthemic pop music. She's not burrowing down in indie or creating very reference-laden, complex, layered work that's aimed at tastemakers and people who are in the know. She wants to basically make stadium pop about gay stories, and that's where Chappell is so uniquely different. She has the it factor and the talent of a main pop girl, but she also has a really interesting, tender, and unheard story to tell, which makes her, even her silly and superfluous songs, have a deeper subtext. Gay people love pop music, right? We project onto our mothers, the Charlies, the Taylors, the Gagas, the Katy Perrys, but it is mostly projection. You perform a queer reading of their work, or you are being sung to about how it's okay to be gay. Take the difference between Born This Way and Pink Pony Club as an example. Born This Way is basically a lullaby telling baby gays it's okay to be who you are, and that's great. There was a necessity for that, especially pre-gay marriage being legalized in the US, etc., etc. It existed in the time and the context of all in which came before it. What Chappell does, however, as a queer artist, is slightly different. She's singing real stories about queer lives that are relatable, that we haven't heard in mainstream pop before. And by mainstream pop, I mean something that you're likely to encounter anywhere in the world, beloved by all. She does the very Taylor Swift thing of writing semi-vaguely, semi-specifically about a big feeling. Pink Pony Club is about knowing that you're on the precipice of living your life in a way that is terrifying to you, that your parents, the only people who have loved and supported you fully until now, may not support, and yet feeling so jubilant and enamored by existing in a place where you feel seen that you throw caution to the wind and you just live your life authentically anyway. That is a complex, layered, queer story that's hard to tell in the format of a pop song that straight people and gay people will listen to and bop along because it's very universal. Everyone can relate to feeling like you don't belong, but the specifics here are very important for the queer audience. There's no need to project or invent your own story or your own meaning of what the song might be about in relation to your life. Chappell has made it for you so that you feel seen and understood. That is important. I'll get into more of these stories that she tells as we go through her career highlights, but I think it's important to point out before we get to the part where she pops off how essential the queerness is as a part of her popping off. So after Chappell's had this talking to by Dan Nigro about how she needs to get out and do it on her own, a few months later we arrive at Naked in Manhattan. Chappell has very deep creative partnerships that are fruitful and unfold over time. This is her first visual collaboration with Ryan Clemens, her friend, and who eventually shot her Midwest Princess album cover. The video for Naked in Manhattan is very low budget. That's easy to tell. It's Chappell and a bunch of ridiculous outfits, parading around New York City, lip syncing, and yet the DIY thing works with this song. It dovetails with the story she's telling of first times and self-discovery. As the production quality increases throughout the single releases for Midwest Princess, you can kind of track her birth into stardom alongside her feeling more and more comfortable in her skin as a queer woman. There are so many layers to the Chappell Roan origin story that it's just an exciting thing to follow along with. It's giving story. It's giving narrative. Let's talk about Naked in Manhattan itself. This is a progression from Pink Pony Club. Pink Pony Club was about finding yourself in the sense like, oh, I've just realized that there's this whole other world out there. Everything that comes after that, sonically, for Chappell, is figuring out the particulars. Okay, so I know I'm queer and this is the way I need to live my life, and I love this community, but how do I become part of it? Naked in Manhattan is a very, very tender, mid-tempo bop about being unsure, but excited about wanting to try new things. There is an almost childlike quality in the bestie slumber party curiosity of it all. Hair clips, lip gloss, French kiss, sitting crisscross, which is by itself a very queer experience. Being at a same-sex sleepover and having a crush, we all know that feeling. There's a very visceral, hungry yearning on the hook. Touch me, touch me, touch me, touch me. She's singing about a few different queer experiences here. The first is moving to a big city where there are more out, open, happy queer people to meet and just see out in this world, exemplified by the lyric, in New York, you can ... try things. Her lyrics lean into the hyper-specific in that second verse. I sing that Lana song that made you cry, which upon investigation is Riot and Mariners, by the way. Both having a crush on Regina George, then heading back into a very universal queer experience. Touch me, baby, put your lips on mine. Could go to hell, but we'll probably be fine. I know you want it. Baby, you can have it. Oh, I've never done it. Let's make it cinematic. The way that this song is constructed is so wonderful. It is both very simple in that it's about desire and wanting someone badly for the first time, but also complex in the queer element of it being a first time and trying to reconcile that with the layers of shame you were programmed with. It's insane. And her vocals. Chappell knows how to murder an ad-lib. She really does. And she said that her two vocal inspirations were Karen Carpenter and Stevie Nicks. Karen Carpenter was always described as having a very pure and clean tone with great technique, which Chappell has, whereas Stevie is definitely a more distinctive and powerful, emotive singer with a nasal and raspy tone. And I can see both of those things actually very present in Chappell. Her next single and music video is a pretty big step up in production quality. She doesn't have $1 million, but she's got enough for a proper camera rig and to hire some extras and a prop stylist. I assume this is kind of around when she signed her Sony publishing deal and had some more money to play with. But anywho, it's My Kink is Karma, my personal favorite Chappell Roan song. The first one that I heard, I think, and the video is what really blew me away. So this song is about her last relationship with a man, I believe. And this song is a list of everything that she hates about him. And it's truly a delusional Scorpio fantasy about watching your ex-boyfriend's entire life collapse without you in it with a goddamn smile on your face. Yes. And again, there are more hyper-specific details that kind of capture your attention. I heard from Katie, you're losing it lately. No need to be hateful in your fake Gucci sweater. There's an intimacy that builds with the listener there. The way that this song builds and the tensions that it creates before that absolute release of a climax in the chorus, it's honestly sexual. It literally mirrors the concept of the song, My Kink is Karma. People say I'm jealous, but my kink is watching you ruin your life. Hello? The way she's literally like panting and moaning in ecstasy towards the end of the song as her life gets better and his continues to disintegrate is cinema.
Oh God, oh God, oh God.
And speaking of cinema, this music video, we're seeing classic Chappell Roan iconography taking place here. The clownish painted face, the absurd glittery tear eye makeup, stripper heels, fishnets, her body tee. She's basically this evil clown who is coming to use her boyfriend as a puppet and using him as target practice. I saw this video and I knew that I was beholding a star. At this point, the songs are doing okay. They're not doing terribly, but they're certainly not popping off the way that she's popping off now. This is 2022, keep in mind. What's happening, however, is that she's courting a very passionate queer audience that is desperately rooting for her to succeed. She's playing tiny shows all the time in college basements and giving it her all, and you can see the audience giving that energy right back to her. This is the bedrock of Chappell's success, people that really ride for her. So while it's still small fry comparatively, it's already way more successful than anything that came out on her label, mediated through layers of what other people thought she should do. And a big break she had this year before she started releasing all this new Dan co-written material was opening for Olivia Rodrigo on the Sour Tour. And that was really helpful, and it continued to be helpful once the album came out. Her next single is the iconic tongue twister Femininomenon. I would call this her Vroom Vroom. Quite literally, there's the revving of a motorcycle in it. It's an extremely campy, silly, lighthearted banger that ends up being the opening track and what I would call her mission statement to Midwest Princess. It's basically about how sleeping with women versus men was a real phenomenon to her. Get it hot like Papa John. It's a Femininomenon. It's a bizarre, weird song that really shouldn't work, but totally does. And it also has some classic Chappell spoken word interjections. Can you play a song with a beat? We're still in 2022, by the way. A misconception that a lot of people have, again, is that Chappell Roan was just born out of nowhere. She did not just fall from a coconut tree. As I mentioned, she exists in the context of all in which she lives and what came before her. It was a long slog to get to where she got, largely laid by the groundwork of putting out this phenomenal music while not many people were paying attention. Her next release, I think, is where the Chappell mythology really starts to build. What I like about looking through her visual discography, especially, is that you can see where she really starts to evolve and come into her own. We get the casual music video, which is this bizarre kind of like neo-horror influenced tale of falling in love with a sea creature who is notoriously difficult to tame, having just floated in off the shore, biting people's faces off. Chappell is really hard launching her signature white painted face here, clown-like and ghostly, and also her auburn locks. That was a great decision. It's a very recognizable feature of hers. And something that Chappell has definitely learned from Gaga is that if you do something ridiculous over and over again, people will remember you. Remember Gaga's meat dress, the disco stick, if we're going back all the way. Having an identifiable shtick really kind of helps people recall you and helps you stick in their brain, especially when you're trying to get some mainstream success. In the video for Casual, Chappell manages to access a tender side of this sea creature monster, eventually creating a room for her in her house and inviting her into her life, and then all of a sudden the monster goes back to sea. Casual is a ballad, very different from her recent output at this point. I would say this yielded a viral moment for her later on, during the Guts tour with all the 12-year-olds screaming knee-deep in the passenger seat and you're eating me out, is it casual now? But that didn't happen when the song came out, although the song, I would say, shifted the needle a little bit for her. This song is about a situationship, which is a pain we all know and hate, straight or gay. Someone starts to weave you into the magic fabric of their dreaming. You're meeting their mom, you're hanging out with their friends, but all the while they're saying it's casual. Meanwhile, you're essentially dating. There is a lot of jarring language here, very frank assertions of the sex that was had alongside the emotional intimacy of their relationship, underscoring that this truly was not something that was just casual. What's so brilliant about this song is that it centers the queer experience in a way that doesn't other it. The pronouns here are female, she's talking about sex acts between women, but the core message of the song is a bigger feeling, something that doesn't only happen to queer people. That's why I think Chappell is able to resonate so widely and will penetrate the mainstream. Gay artists do tend to niche down, and mama boots, that's great. But Chappell is casting her net a little bit wider. I'm not always sure if she does this intentionally or not, but it's happening. Then she released Kaleidoscope and TBH. I'm going to skip over it because I didn't move, but let's get straight into the HBIC. Red Wine Supernova. This was, I think, one of her first viral songs, and for a long time her most streamed song before Good Luck Babe came out and when she was really starting to get mainstream attention. After her album came out, this was the song people were vibing to the most, and it's also what she selected to play for her very first late night TV performance. Red Wine Supernova is Chappell's quote-unquote gay girl anthem. As opposed to her more subtle queer anthems, this one is right up in your face. She wanted to be clear that this was about a woman. Red Wine Supernova has a really fun and raunchy music video and very raunchy lyrics as well. I also think this song really shows off her sense of humor. I heard you like magic. I've got a wand and a rabbit. I think thematically this picks up from where Naked in Manhattan left off and takes it a step further. Naked in Manhattan is about wanting to explore, and Red Wine Supernova is about the exploration. Then we get to the Diva, our final pre-release before the album comes out, and half of the album is already out with all these singles, by the way. This is where I think the energy around Chappell really shifted, and also where she truly clocked in. The album was about to come out and she had no label. We're in August of 2023. She was a one-woman marketing machine. If I remember correctly, she had like 200,000 Instagram followers and was basically just trying to go viral on TikTok with little clips of her songs. And Hot to Go, the final single before the album came out, was a really successful guerrilla marketing, boots on the ground success. This song is ridiculous. And Chappell has said before that one of the questions she asks herself when writing a fun song is, does this make my inner child happy? Would I want to scream and dance and run around and do somersaults to this? It's a resounding yes for this song, which again, just so perfectly describes the feeling of being horny and really vibing and feeling someone and wanting to just get to know them under their clothes. From a production perspective, this song is massive. It's got swelling synths, an anthemic chanting chorus. It just goes all the way off. The way she howls, "What's it take to get your number?" The vocals in that outro, oh my God. this song changed my life. And we have to give credit where credit is due. Chappell has said that for her, writing a silly, fun pop song is much, much harder and more calculated than creating a sad ballad. I would say that this is her best music video as well. It just encapsulates what's so compelling about Chappell. She's in Springfield, Missouri, and she's at all these suburban locales, a high school theater, a random public art installation, a monster truck rally, her grandparents' house dressed in full clown core. She's in maximum Chappell in the place that made her feel potentially when she was younger that this kind of existence that she's living in right now would never be possible for her. And the high-low of this deceptively simple but extraordinarily clever pop song, which was constructed to make you sing along and never forget it, with the tackiness and the camp glamour of the drag-inspired costumes, as well as actual queens in the video, it's just the kind of vision that can only come from an artist who has had the space to play and learn how to be themselves. Sometimes, being a prodigy is not all it's cracked up to be. Sometimes you need to take a minute to arrive at the success. Chappell has also said that her music is for the gay scenes that exist quietly in basement parties in the rural South or through a phone screen, places where it's not easy to be, joyous and overblown about your sexuality. And I think that's exactly what her music offers. She is so unabashedly making music for the girls and the gays without bothering to cater to the hetero gays. She does not compromise her vision to make it more palatable. She forces her Republican grandparents to stand there in front of their house, yes they will, and do the goddamn hot to go dance. HOTTOGO, period. So we're in August 2023 now, a month out from album release, and she's gaining real momentum. The Midwest Princess Tour, initially only planned to be the fall of 2023, is starting to sell out slowly but surely. The tour starts before the album comes out, and she's already doing something very clever. First of all, introducing themes to her shows. Based on her looks or songs that she's written, each city gets its own theme. This is like great parasocial relationship and community building. She's also, at her shows, soliciting local drag queens to come and perform as her openers, then sharing their PayPal and Cash App information on her story to make sure they get tipped. Imagine how big of a deal this is in a small town where there isn't maybe a huge audience for that. This is an important nod to her performance style, which is heavily influenced by Queen and ballroom culture. Right before the record comes out, it's also announced that she will be opening for Olivia Rodrigo on the North American leg of her Guts Arena Tour in 2024. This is a majorly well-timed announcement. And then it arrives. Midwest Princess in all its glory is one of the most complete, confident, and self-assured debut records that I've seen in years. And a lot of that comes from the fact that Chappell was forced to painstakingly arrive at this moment, doing her boots on the ground marketing with herself, her Instagram account, and friends that would discount their rates for her so she could afford to shoot, edit, write, and record all of this music. The cover art is very iconic as well. I'm definitely sensing a whole live through this reference here, but the title of the record, The Rise and Fall of Midwest Princess, is so apt too. And around this time, before the record came out proper, Chappell was kind of teasing the spoken word intro of Super Graphic Ultra Modern Girl, which is one of the best songs on the records. It is a raucous, ridiculous, classic disco number with a goddamn cowbell on the song. When was the last time you heard a cowbell on a pop song? A long time. A long time.
Not over dramatic. I know what I want.
Chappell has always cited Teenage Dream and Katy Perry's tackiness as well as a big influence for her, and I think she takes part of that and grounds it in something more real, which is the lived experience of being a queer woman, trying to make it in an industry that treats women like they are disposable, and this record is from start to finish very, very good and extremely fully realized. After the record comes out, it's off to the races. The tour is going great. Her headlining tour that she announced, there are clips of Chappell performing going viral. Hot to Go is a bit of a sleeper hit. Its success ramps up after the album comes out, and presently is her third most streamed track behind Good Luck Babe and Red Wine Supernova. I think that putting the record out and having it be so good really helped Chappell finally start to knock on doors in Hollywood and in the music industry that you can't knock on unless you're signed to a major label. Her proximity to Olivia via working with Dan, which was just a stroke of luck, she happened to work with Dan before Olivia blew up, I think really helped expose her to an audience that was ready to receive her. If you can believe it, by this point there were like very few professionally shot performances of any of this amazing material. I remember trawling YouTube for like phone videos of the Midwest Princess Tour. Vivo then invites her to perform Casual and Red Wine Supernova for their Artist to Watch series. The Casual music video gets selected for the prestigious South by Southwest Festival, and she books Coachella. Then she announces a summer tour. Like, it's off to the goddamn races even before Guts actually gets started. And then she starts getting invited to events and again pulls from the Gaga playbook, dressing outlandishly. For example, wearing full clown makeup or a pig nose to a red carpet event is a very memorable thing to do, especially in an era where the pop girls are very devoted to slaying beautifully in every moment. Chappell said in interviews that she's okay with looking ugly or freaky or weird. She makes her late night TV debut singing Red Wine Supernova on The Colbert Show, and here's where the years of training wheels really makes a difference and helps her hard launch launch a debut product. She was ready. She had been touring for months. She had worked out her style. She knew the songs were catching on. She steps onto that stage fully realized and embodied to deliver a high caliber performance of a seasoned artist. You'd be shocked to learn that that was a debut artist if you knew nothing about her. So this new exposure, plus the hardcore devotion she'd ingrained in her existing fan base already, made it feel like Chappell Roan was this fully actualized artist you'd never heard of before. And I think this is the driver of why people are so obsessed with her. Suddenly you stumble into this universe of like excellent pop music with detailed, vivid storytelling, iconic visuals, and a charismatic girly leading the charge. Who the hell was gatekeeping this secret from you? I'm your favorite artist. The Guts tour starts, and that just adds a new layer of intensity to Chappell's rise. There are the aforementioned viral casual scream moments going on TikTok. And a new generation of young girls, the best possible people to market pop music to, are exposed to the musical stylings of this diva. Up next for Chappell is her NPR Tiny Desk series, which lends her more credibility as a serious artist. She's kind of hitting all the marks, which are hard to hit at the same time at this period. She's booking gigs like NPR, which signal the industry nod of highbrow, you're doing something good, something award-worthy, while also appealing to the hardcore audience of teen girls who favor artists that generally don't tend to be looked upon fondly by the auteurs of music. Chappell bridges the gap somehow. Her NPR performance is absurd and ridiculous. She's deliberately smeared lipstick all over her teeth. And again, this was very smart. Think about it. When you stumble on a viral clip of someone in clown makeup with lipstick on their teeth, wailing their heart out, dressed like an 80s prom queen, you're going to send it to your friend and say, who the hell is this? And this is where the blowing up really starts to happen. So when you have all this momentum behind you, everyone's dug into your catalog and discovered that you're the next big thing. What can you do next to be that big thing? Well, put out a new song. And that's exactly what Chappell did, and it was just as good, if not better, than anything on Midwest Princess. Good Luck Babe was performed before it was released, and Chappell was actually nervous about its chances of doing well, being that Universal Music Group and TikTok were locked in a battle over royalties that temporarily removed a bunch of artists' work from the platform. Now remember, with no label or marketing team behind her, the literal only thing that Chappell could do to hype up her releases was to use social media, and TikTok is the biggest driver in music discovery these days. It was theoretically disastrous that her music would not be available on TikTok at this time, and yet she persisted, and Good Luck Babe was so good that it took off anyway. Are you seeing how it was kind of a perfect storm, how well all of these things came together? A lot of music industry success stuff is also about timing. Chappell was ahead of her time, but when the world caught up, she was ready. She hadn't given up yet. So then Chappell performs at Coachella, and just as expected, she knocks it out of the park. She's the artist to go and see. People at home are glued to the live stream. She comes out wearing an iconic look, full latex, saying "Eat Me," with all of her band members saying "Eat the Rich." And then the following Coachella weekend, where the iconic, I'm your favorite artist moment happened, is even more mental.
My name is Chappell Roan. I'm your favorite artist. I'm your dream girl's dream girl. And I'm gonna serve exactly what you are.
She's dressed as this Gorgina beautiful butterfly, and the song Good Luck Babe just goes completely viral at this point. I mean, it's such a good song. It's a song about compulsory heterosexuality. It's about trying to be with someone who will never be okay with being themselves, which is a distinctly queer experience. Sometimes you meet someone that you really want to love, but they aren't able to accept something very vulnerable about themselves, their sexuality, and you just know that there's no point trying to convince them to be okay with themselves. You can't do that work for someone. It's too painful. So all you can do is let them go, let all this potential love go, and say, you know what? Good luck, babe. It's a searing takedown. You could kiss 100 boys in bars, shoot another shot, try to fight the feeling. You could say it's just the way you are, make a new excuse, another stupid reason. Well, good luck, babe. This is also a song about protecting yourself. It's sad that there are queer people who can't come to terms with themselves, but the way that those people do tend to wreak havoc on other queer people's lives by doing this half in, half out thing is honestly messed up and hurtful. And you know what? I have never in my life heard that specific, that so distinctly gay experience articulated in a pop song. It's like finally we have a gay main character in the mainstream. It helps that while Good Luck Babe is popping off and she's going viral over and over on TikTok, that she's also playing festivals where her exposure to new audiences that may not be familiar with her entirely is huge. She always makes sure to show up in a goddamn look too. In green as Lady Liberty, or in a bedazzled football jersey with shoulder pads that say good luck, babe. And what we're starting to see happen here is a true monoculture effect. The word of mouth is making Chappell Roan blow up. Suddenly her sets are packed. They're being moved to bigger stages at the festivals than she was booked to accommodate the demand. Her shows are full to the brim. People are standing on overpasses just to hear the hot to go chorus. She is all of a sudden very big in a very tangible away. Like, we're literally watching her crowds get bigger. And there's all these viral TikToks of her singing Pink Pony Club in a park to like 4 people compared with her singing it to thousands at Gov. I think a big part of the reason why people love Chappell is because you can literally track her journey. She has been so open about her early failure and very transparent about her desire to be successful. There's a relatable and very modern version of the American dream here. Pull yourself up by your lesbian bootstraps and be the pop diva. I think it's also reassuring to note that, you know, in your mid to late 20s, you still got a shot. There's a narrative in the music industry, especially, that really reveres the ingenue, the Olivias and the Lordes who just immediately break through with the first thoughts they put to paper. That is rare and stressful, and I think Chappell's long, hard slog is more relatable and inspiring. Chappell's ability to transform reminds us of our own ability to become someone new should we ever have to or need to. The real question now is, where does she go from here? Chappell has already broken down on stage crying about how she feels like this is all happening so fast that it's outpacing her. In interviews, she's talking about how she's actively trying not to become more famous and called this monoculture spread of her work a forest fire that feeds itself. Chappell's a true artiste, and so I'm not hoping that she completely reinvents the wheel for whatever she does next. I think we've barely scratched the surface when it comes to her. When you're able to come up with something as pristine as Good Luck Babe after putting out one of the best debut albums in recent memory, like you'd think the bank was empty, in close succession too, she's a star, honey. I think she can ride off of this momentum and goodwill for a long while. What I'd like to see is some more budget for a tour where she can really serve the looks that she was born to serve. I think she's a great artist to perform at a festival. It's been a Chappell summer as well as a Brat summer in that regard. And I think the smart thing to do would be to release on its 1-year anniversary, which is coming up fairly soon, a deluxe edition of Midwest Princess with a substantial amount of new songs. Kind of like the Fame Monster, I guess. I would settle even just for 4 new songs and Good Luck Babe. She's already got Subway in the bag waiting to go. I hope she continues to work with Dan, but I also trust her instincts, and if she wants to branch out, I'm seated for that. So that is kind of my top line summary of how Chappell Roan became the biggest artist in the world, as she is right now. How about you? How do you feel about Chappell Roan? Are you afflicted with a feminine phenomenon? Are you hot to go? Are you also looking for a super graphic, ultra modern girl like me? Let me know in the comments below, and thank you so much to Riverside for sponsoring this video, and I will see you next week.